So this is a after-action report of the Battle of Melle from Battles from the Age of Reason. This is a battle that I played face-to-face with a friend of mine who was learning bar along with me, and we decided that we would play this scenario as our first contact, as it were, between the two of us. I have only played solo, as you saw in my recent video from Battle of Malvitz, and he had never played at all. And so we chose the Battle of Melle because it's a small half-map footprint, uses very few units, and is generally billed as a good starter game for learning bar. So I'm going to do a little more coverage on bar, I think. I might solo it. I really enjoyed the experience we had playing it. It plays pretty quickly, and there's a lot of potential variability and replayability to the battle, although I don't think it's a particularly competitive game. I still think it's interesting to explore. You can see here the beginning of turn one, sort of one or two activations in. We've got this column road march of the pragmatic allies sort of coming up this road in the south. And then at the top of the screen, you can see towards the village of Melle, the French positions. The French start this scenario disordered all over the map, and one of their challenges is to undisorder and get into some sort of command so that they can stop the Allied advance. Here is kind of later in the game what ended up befalling the Allies. So we had a contingent of the Allied infantry off to the left-hand side of the image that you can't see, but we had the cavalry under the command of Colonel Rich, who you can see there, British unit by the bridge. He led his cavalry there to try and get past that Prieur de Melle, which is this walled farm that the French have with some Swedish artillery and some infantry, and it makes a really good defensive bastion for anyone passing by. I tried to wait till the sun went down and it was dark, and the artillery range was short, and make a run for it up the road, because you can see at the top of the image the French pontoon train, and that's where the victory points for the Allies if they can get to it. But the French had moved an infantry brigade across the Gontrode River there, Gontrode Stream, and had sort of started putting musket fire down on the cavalry, and the combined artillery from the fortified farm made it really difficult for the Allies to make any progress. As you can see, Colonel Rich separated from his command. He had a unit underneath him eliminated, shot out from under him by those artillery in that town. So it's pretty tough going for the Allies. Here to the left, which you couldn't see on the last image, this was an attempted crossing further down, where the Allies attempted to cross this bridge across the Gontrode into the village of Moulin before the French cavalry could collect themselves and get into the area. Unfortunately, based on the way the activations went and the special events that we got, the French were able to get to the bridge first, and that caused the Allies a huge deal of trouble. One of the cavalry units under the command of von Moltke and von Moltke himself were eliminated in that clash. And then the French cavalry pushed across the stream. Here we can see some of the, I don't know if it's British or possibly Hanoverian cavalry. It looks like it might be British. British cavalry trying to do a flanking charge into the side of that French cavalry unit there, while the infantry forms up into an extended line and tries to close the gap and force a crossing there. Unfortunately, it would not happen. Here's a little bit later in the scenario. I'll take you through it a little bit. The line of infantry there for the Allies were not able to make much progress against the French, who retired back across the safety of the river and held the bridge. The cavalry attempting to skirt the walled farm decided to turn around in the face of a French infantry advance, and they wanted to cross through those woods. You can see actually in this picture that the commander of that formation and I think one of his units managed to get across. I think it was Colonel Rich, who managed on his own to kind of circumnavigate the forest and come around the north side, and he's trying to get his units across before the French can reach them. And then here in the foreground, we have a couple of Allied cavalry units on the left, kind of shadowing these French units, who come actually from the bottom, from the entrance, the Allied entrance of the map, sort of halfway through the scenario. They've got some French skirmishers and some French cavalry who come up the road in the rear. And my opponent decided to keep them on the road and keep them moving towards the walled farm. And I was trying to, you score points by causing casualties, and I did a really poor job up to this point as the ally. So I was trying to shadow that march along the road with my own cavalry to see if I could maybe cut through the swamps, as you can see here in the picture near the road, and maybe do a charge against those skirmishers, where I had an advantage and a speed advantage at that. But it ultimately was not to be. Here's here's kind of what we look like closing in on the nighttime hours, or the pure dark hours. We've got a line of British infantry faced off against those French cavalry. We've still got some Allied cavalry attempting to get through those woods in the face of a French advance. Really nothing doing. It was really difficult. You suffer a morale penalty if you don't cross that stream, that river, the Gontrode, by a certain time, and I was never able to do it. There were just too many guns that the French had pointed at me, and so the opportunity fire was just blowing holes in my line. And the French cavalry there on the left near Melle are some of the best units in this scenario. They are extremely powerful, really good morale, really good combat value modifiers. And my only hope really was to try and advance my infantry, muskets blazing into them to force them back. And it was partially successful. As you can see here, they made pretty good headway with opportunity fire and marching, moving up towards the Gontrode. I actually got a couple units across into the village, but the cavalry was pretty stout. I did cause a loss or two, but was never able to fully engage them like I wanted to. And then, behind them, they're supported by more French infantry from, looks like Normandy, those Normandy battalions. They were coming in to try and prevent this crossing through the woods, pincering, the cavalry that Rich was trying to get across under the cover of trees. You can see one of those units got shaken and disordered before they could make the crossing, but one of them did get across with Colonel Rich, and Colonel Rich decided to just take off up the road to see if he could exit the north end of the map before the scenario ended to get some victory points. And I was never really able to do much with the skirmishers. The French skirmishers up the road, you can see that Hochstege, who's a replacement leader, and his unit that he's commanding there in the red and tan, the 6-6, they decided to make a run for it during the dark nighttime hours when the artillery range was really low to try and get across the bridge and get to the pontoon train, which at that point I would have considered a victory because it would have given me some points in this scenario. And you can see here, I managed to make it. I managed to run the gauntlet of French there who just didn't quite have their lines tight. And in the middle of the night, approach the French pontoon train and make an attack and overrun it and destroy it. So this is kind of where the scenario ended up. The French really in control of the entire length of the Gontrode. There's some, various pockets of Allied units, but they're not really threatening anything. They don't really have the unit quality to be able to really stand up to the French in a fair fight. This scenario, this game, really comes down to how the activation rolls go, and that's really going to make or break the Allied strategy. Here's just a little shot of the Dutch units and Colonel Rich that managed to get through the French cordon at the end of the game. You can see if we had one more turn, I probably would have been able to get some of those guys into road column and off the edge of the map and score some points. But unfortunately, the scenario ended before I could do it. And here's a final look at the positions at the end of the Battle of Melle, which was actually pretty historical in terms of both what I tried to do with the Allies and the actual result. It was a resounding French victory historically, and it was a pretty resounding French victory here. Even though I did manage to get some units through, they weren't able to exit the map in the time that the scenario would have required. And the British line there around Melle was not able to push forward as much as they would have wanted to try and force the French back. So, but all in all, it was a great time. And like I said, I'll have some footage for a solo playthrough of this very shortly. So I hope you enjoyed this quick static look at the Battle of Melle experience I had last week.